the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network presents Vatican Insider with Joan Lewis. Each week, Joan brings you news from inside the Vatican and the Church around the world, as well as interviews and answers to your questions. Now, here's the host of Vatican Insider, Joan Lewis.
In 2012, Father Hans Zollner, a German Jesuit theologian and psychologist, founded and was president of the Center for Child Protection at Rome's Jesuit-run Gregorian University. In April 2021, that became the Institute of Anthropology that he now directs. In my interview with him, we talk about the Institute, the courses and degrees it offers, and how dioceses around the world are adopting similar programs. The Gregorian University annually holds what is known as the ISC, the International Safeguarding Conference, sponsored by the Institute of Anthropology that Father Zollner founded. The 2024 conference, June 18 to 21, focused on safeguarding and disability, aiming at an approach that puts people with disabilities at the center of discussions. In view of that conference, I felt it could be important to re-air my interview with Father Zollner and thus learn about the Institute of Anthropology. I want to welcome my listeners to Vatican Insider with a real special guest this weekend, and that's Father Hans Zollner. Now, he's a German Jesuit, a theologian, and a psychologist, and he's founder of the Institute of Anthropology, Interdisciplinary Studies on Human Dignity and Care. And that's going to be called the Institute from now on in the interview. And he directs that, founded it, and directs it. And Father's a licensed psychotherapist and regarded as one of the leading ecclesiastical experts in the field of safeguarding from sexual abuse, especially, of course, in the Catholic Church. So, Father Hans, welcome to Vatican Insider.
Thank you very much.
Just a little background about Father to understand where he's coming from and more about the Institute. He has a doctorate in theology from the University of Innsbruck. He got a licentiate in psychology at the Institute of Psychology at Rome's Pontifical Gregorian University. That's a Jesuit university. And then in 2012, at the Greg, you founded and was president of the Center for Child Protection, the CCP. And then in April, just last year, that became the Institute of Anthropology, etc., which we spoke of a minute ago. But Father, tell us about yourself and your path to Rome, how you were directed to your studies, and eventually here in Rome.
Yeah, I grew up in Regensburg, in the center of Bavaria, in the south of Germany, the city where Pope Benedict was professor of theology.
I love Regensburg.
Oh, yes, it is a beautiful city. Of course, I studied there when he had already been appointed to be the Archbishop of Munich and then later became the prefect of the Congregation for Doctrine.
Right.
However, after high school, I entered the seminary of my home diocese as a seminarian, but soon discovered that I would rather not be a diocesan priest, but religious. So I discovered Ignatian Jesuit spirituality, discovered the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, and after my studies in philosophy and theology, I entered the Jesuits in southern Germany. And then I worked, after novitiate, I worked in the University Chaplaincy of Munich, State University, and discovered my interest in accompanying people. So my provincial of that time and myself, we decided that it would be good that I study psychology. So I was missioned here to do the training in academic psychology and the psychotherapeutic training from 1994 to 97. And then I was chaplain again at a high school in a boarding school of the Jesuits in southern Germany. But then the Institute of Psychology requested my presence here for teaching, and that's why I came back to Rome in 2003, and since then I have been teaching at the Gregorian University, first in psychology and since 2 years now in the Institute of Anthropology, which we also call the Safeguarding Institute.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yes, we have a shortcut for that long name. That is
because your initials are IADC, but then if somebody says, what does that mean?
Right.
You have to go into the whole title.
Exactly.
So the Safeguarding Institute,
Institute.
another title. Well, I have to say, I didn't know till recently that there was psychology that was being taught at the Greg. That's absolutely fascinating.
Especially, the Institute was established after the vocational crisis following immediately on Vatican Council II. The two Italian Jesuits who founded the Institute at the beginning of the 1970s had their degrees from the University of Chicago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, one was a medical doctor and the other was a philosopher, but both trained also as psychologists and psychotherapists in Chicago. And they came back with a research on the motivations on a conscious and an unconscious level that brings people to choose a religious vocation or to enter the seminary, and why they leave that vocation. And that research, original research, got the European Prize of the Society for Psychology of Religion, so it was a really high mark in the scientific research community. And the speciality of this institute till now is that it's, as I said, a combination of academics and of the practical, the professional formation of psychotherapists, meant to intervene in seminary formation and in religious formation, which means the formation and education of young religious, male and female. And that is what the work has been for more than 50 years now.
That's fascinating. I did not know that history. So now you've established the Institute, that was last year, of Anthropology. And what is the most significant aspect of such a change, going from the Center for Child Protection to this Institute and its degrees, etc.?
There are two sides to that. One is center to institute, and the other side is from child protection to dignity, human dignity and care of vulnerable people. The first part is very easily explained by the need to find a structure within the university that gives, that allows for a full-fledged institute to flourish in terms of awarding its own degrees, academic degrees, and giving the possibility to the faculty to develop their own academic careers, which was not the case with a center. In our structure, a center doesn't have its own faculty and can't award its own degrees. So that was one, academic upgrade that we have received, and which puts us in the same position like other institutes, and to some extent also of the faculties of the university.
Sure.
The second point is much more important in the sense that 10, 11 years back, when we started with the Center for Child Protection, everybody was focusing mainly on the abuse that had been committed against minors of age, and everything was seen in psychiatric or legal and canonical terms. Mm-hmm. That has changed over time. Not least because of developments that took place in the United States, like the Me Too movement in 2017, and the case of the former Cardinal McCarrick, and the abuse of seminarians that came to the spotlight. And then Pope Francis himself put another point on the agenda, that is the abuse of religious women by clergy in some parts of the world. So we have seen an expansion of the field and of all those topics that we need to address when it comes to sexual abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse, or the abuse of power in general. So we needed to broaden, in any case, our perspective. We could not stay only focused on child protection.
Sure.
Although, of course, that remains a priority within our work. For the blended learning, the e-learning programs, as well as the residential programs. So child protection, of course, is one of our main focuses, but it can't be the only one. So we need also to talk about the protection of vulnerable persons.
Yes, because a lot of people weren't thinking of the adult level where there could be so much abuse. You know, I had a conversation with a theologian friend about the Institute. And the question came up that since having an anthropology presumes having a vision of man that is unified and systematic, how does the Church which seeks to integrate philosophical, theological, and scientific views in a harmonious way. How does the Church deal with a hostile, secular anthropology that's ever more materialistic and individualistic, as if human nature had no reality except that which the individual or the culture determines?
Now, of course, we are a Catholic university, we are a pontifical university, and we stand on the grounds of Christian and Catholic anthropology, which means that we consider everything that has been said alongside the theological development over the centuries by the magisterium, so by the ecclesiastical and the pontifical doctrine that has been promulgated and has been published. So for us, of course, this is the basis. And the more we can also reasonably explain what that means and how an integrated view, for example, of human sexuality, an integrated view and a respectful view of human relationships, of keeping the proper boundaries, helps us to live out our human life, let alone our Christian life, will make us more credible within modern society. And I believe that many people see of late that there are things in the public discussion that bring us to the point of really looking for an orientation. So we need to research, we need to explain ourselves, we need to find a language that is understandable. We cannot pretend that people understand our traditional language, because many people don't have any access to that anymore, and they don't have any knowledge about what certain words that we use normally and regularly mean. So we need also to find a way to explain it for today's society, and for the people who are looking for an orientation and for some guidance, that they can rely on what within the Bible and in Catholic tradition is valuable for that purpose.
Exactly. Now, the university's website, when it announced the new institute, it said, "With this institute, the Pontifical Gregorian University reiterates and intensifies its commitment to the work of protecting minors and vulnerable people," as you just explained, "and supporting safe environments that promote respect for human dignity. At the same time," said the website, "this conversion will deepen the interdisciplinary dimension of education and research," and that sounds like what you were just referring to, as well as, of course, addressing issues surrounding abuse and prevention.
Yeah, I mean, the Gregorian University, since 2011, 2012, when we started with the Center for Child Protection, has taken a lead in this, and I'm very happy that the university leadership over the years have stood very firm in this commitment.
Indeed.
And has given us the possibility to work, and then now also to expand that work. In our university, we have had, of course, a lot of activities, a lot of events, international events, like the first one, the 2012 Symposium towards Healing and Renewal, that started, let me say, a new era of taking note of what has happened in the past, and also laid the groundwork for an international, truly Catholic commitment to safeguarding measures. That was at the same time, basically, when the Center for Child Protection initiated its activities in the training. As an academic institution, of course, we believe that education, formation, training, and coming to research is centerpiece of what we need to do as an academic institution to equip people to do the best, so that the church becomes a safer place for young people and for all people, actually. And the university has also hosted, for example, in 2017, an event that, from my point of view, was quite important, under the title "Child Dignity in the Digital World."
Oh, yes.
Because I believe that the digital world, with all its pros and cons, is the space of most risk for young people today, in terms of all kinds of bullying, mobbing, and all kinds of sexual interaction among youth, and surely also among adults, with adults and youth.
Oh, yeah.
This is Father Leo Paddlinghug, and why do we need Catholic radio? Well, the answer is simple. The devil, who is very real, uses all forms of communication. And so if we are to understand our purpose in life, it's to make sure that we are not only proclaiming the good news, we're also listening to the good news. And how do you do that? With Catholic radio.
The world needs EWTN Catholic Radio, now more than ever.
Hi, I'm Doug Keck. This is an EWTN bookmark brief. I'm speaking with Father Christopher Mahar about his book, Finding God in Suffering, available through our EWTN religious catalog. Tell us, Father Chris, why did you write this book and what's it about?
Yeah, I wrote the book because there's a teaching in the church that's so relevant to our lives. It's on suffering, and all of us go through it. We all experience the cross in one way or another. So I wanted to communicate the church's message about redemptive suffering. I try to carry people through the journey of what it means to discover that there is a meaning in suffering, that God has shown some light on that subject for us, but more importantly, what it can mean for them personally. If they enter into the message of redemptive suffering, how they can participate in the redemptive work of the cross.
Absolutely. Finding God in Suffering. Very interesting work. Father Christopher M. Mahar. Thank you, Father. Check out the book, EWTNRC.com. I'm Doug Keck. This has been an EWTN bookmark brief. Thanks for stopping by.
Welcome back to Vatican Insider. Here's Joan Lewis.
Welcome back to part 2 of my conversation with German Jesuit Father Hans Zollner, founder of the Gregorian University's Institute of Anthropology, Interdisciplinary Studies on Human Dignity and Care, also known as the Safeguarding Institute, whose work looks not only at safeguarding children from abuse, but also vulnerable adults. Now, as far as the Institute goes, I'd love to talk about, this has a program with its own faculty that offers licentiates and doctorates. So what are some of the courses, how long to earn those degrees, and then is the licentiate equivalent to what in America we call a master's degree?
Now, we offer, in residence, we offer 3 courses. 3 programs. One is the diploma course, what we call as a diploma here, which in American language would be a certificate course of 1 semester. Okay. And we do that in English and in Spanish, which is exceptional for Roman universities.
Sure.
But we think that caters to those populations that in the Catholic Church are the most numerous ones, English speakers and Spanish speakers. Then we offer the licentiate, which is effectively in American or in other systems the master's degree equivalent. It is a full ecclesiastical degree, which means it is for a priest or a religious, it allows to teach in a seminary or in a faculty. And the third degree that we offer is a doctorate in anthropology, and that gives you access to an academic career. Now, when it comes to the title of the courses, these deal with the different things that we have in on our safeguarding portfolio. What is childhood and culture, remembering that we have students from 125 countries here.
Sure.
So
and childhood varies.
And childhood varies greatly.
Right. You're an adult in some countries at 19, and you're a teen in others.
Yes, or, I mean, how do people talk about sexuality in different languages,
sure.
In different cultural contexts? So then what can we say about who are the victims and how do you approach victims of abuse? How do you encounter them? What types of therapy are there that are helpful? Then who are the perpetrators within the church, outside the church? How do you deal with perpetrators? Then questions about the institutional settings that favor or impede abusive behavior. Other things that we address are all kinds of definitions like what can we consider spiritual abuse, abuse of power, who are vulnerable persons, because there is no commonly accepted or acceptable and legally binding definition across the globe that would define once and for all who vulnerable persons are.
Fascinating. I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah, then the whole question about the care element. I mean, how do we care for victims? Secondary victims means family members, friends, colleagues, schoolmates of victims. How do we deal with parishes where abusive priests have been working and very often are split between those who defend the priest and those and don't believe the allegations, and others who condemn the priest from the outset. So these are some of the topics that we address, and many people would ask, why do you need a semester or even 2 years for such a program? And I can tell you, the deeper you go into this, the more you discover what is connected, what is linked to all the questions of how can we keep people as safe as possible.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Now, what is the length for a licentiate?
This is a master's degree, is a full second cycle academic degree of 4 semesters, 2 years.
2 years. And the doctorate?
The doctorate depends. I mean, normally a doctorate will take 3 years. It depends, of course, whether one has full time free for doing that, or whether some of our students have family or need to keep working. But normally a doctorate will take 3 years, and we have had a number of very interesting topics for the doctorates. For example, we had a sister from Togo in Africa. She did a doctorate on the sexual abuse committed against religious women by clergy in Western Francophone Africa. Or we had a missionary priest from India who works in Central America, and he was looking into the family history of members of the Marras, of the violent youth gangs in Central America, and how the family history, very often of extreme violence at home, links back to their membership in such gangs and the type of abuse that they are committing.
What about abuses today? My question, what I had written down was, the sex abuse cases today are numbers greatly reduced. But I find that question almost has to be asked twice, because if we're talking about minors, it's one thing, and if we're talking about vulnerable people, it's really another. But I mean, can we be thankful in any small way that numbers are down? Or are they down on child abuse and up on vulnerable?
Actually, I can't reply to that with precision, because we don't have numbers, especially to the letter. Because the discussion and scientific research and concrete numbers on sexual or other types of abuse in regard to vulnerable adults is very recent. So we need to wait a few more years to compare that. However, one thing for sure, we know that in whichever country the church leadership has taken serious steps and made serious efforts in safeguarding, the numbers have gone drastically down. That is true for the US, as we can see in every year's report by the US CCB, which is based on the numbers from the Carter Institute at Georgetown University, which demonstrates that the level of allegations that refer to the recent years after 2002, after the bishops in America adopted the Dallas Charter, are at a minimum, and you won't get lower than that, because we as human beings won't be capable of eradicating once and for all this, but the numbers are at a minimum and have stayed so over the years. However, we need to say that this is not the case all over the globe, because I would say maybe 25 to 30 countries in the world, and I talk only about the Catholic Church, I don't talk about other religions, I don't talk about the state and sports associations and others. Only in 20 to 30 countries in the world there have been taken serious steps and enforced steps and implemented steps to take safeguarding serious, in terms of guidelines that were implemented, in terms of formation that has become obligatory, mandatory for groups like priests, like pastoral workers, like nurses, and so forth. For sure, wherever those measures have been taken, the numbers have come down to almost zero, never zero completely, but very low.
Well, in some countries where the numbers are not as good, shall we say, is there often a question of kind of a cultural pushback on that?
Till now, I've come back from Africa recently,
right.
And till now there are people in some parts of the world that say that child sexual abuse by clergy is a Western problem, is a problem of the secularized societies and so forth. But when you talk with the bishops, when you know about the numbers of allegations, when you see how sexuality is very often completely repressed and not talked about in the public discourse, and let alone within the Catholic Church, you realize that this is a phenomenon that you see across the globe, and there is no country and no culture that is completely exempt of it. So this is very often just a point that is made to avoid any kind of facing reality.
Sure.
And unfortunately, in some parts of the world, the church, local church, the bishops' conferences, the religious have made the same mistakes as have been made by the bishops in other parts, in Western parts of the globe. And unfortunately, there is a question, why don't we learn better and faster from experiences and best practices in one part of the world and can transport that to other parts?
Well, you do such extraordinarily important work that impacts so many levels of society, as you emphasized today, not just abuse of children, but abuse of vulnerable people. How do we define vulnerable? And I just want to thank you for your time. I know that it's limited and you have so much work to do with all the courses.
Thank you very much for having me, and all the best to you.
Well, God bless you and safe travels.
For more information on these stories, or to check out Joan's blog and to ask her a question, go to EWTN.com. That's EWTN.com. Thanks for listening to Vatican Insider on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.